Hello and welcome to Freya's Tropical Garden. It's a lovely hot day here in the south coast of England with temperatures reaching up to 26 degrees C. So let's have a look and see what's coming up in today's episode. I have a go at making a basic terrarium. In part 2 of my Wisley video, I take you around the Tropical Glasshouse. And it's time to draw the results of my canna competition. But first, let's take a look at how my garden's changed since the last episode. It's getting to that time of year now where there aren't really any dramatic changes in my garden. Generally, things are getting bigger and taller and bushier. So I've decided to include a section in my garden update videos now that will take you through a section of my garden and talk you through all the plants that are planted in that section of my garden. So if there's a plant that you've been wondering what it is, hopefully you'll now be able to identify it. Sadly, my beautiful cat Sparky was killed by a car a couple of weeks ago, and I've marked the spot where I buried him with this beautiful Acer palmatum ukigumo. Appropriately known as the floating cloud maple, it has this lovely variegated pink leaf. My musabasju's still flowering. This is the first time I've had a banana flower, so it's taken me by surprise just how long it takes for it to strip away these petals bit by bit. And you can see the cluster of tiny bananas behind it. My nicotiana is continuing to flower. I have quite a few of these dotted around the garden, so I've got some others starting to flower as well. And my Salvia amistad is finally starting to look absolutely stunning with these deep shades of purple, towering over the other plants that are growing in that area. Salvia amistad loves a sunny, sheltered spot with well-draining soil. It's half hardy, tolerating temperatures down to about -5 degrees C. This one's been in the ground for about 3 years now, but this is the first year it's really struggled to come back. It's also a great plant for wildlife, and bees absolutely love it, as it's rich in both nectar and pollen. And in this densely foliaged area of my garden, if you look more closely underneath it all, you can see this beautiful canna starting to flower. This will have a lovely orange flower when it opens. And next to it, this pink canna is already opened up. And these splashes of colour really do help to break up the green foliage. My cannas stay in the ground all year long. They like to be well watered and fed regularly. Cannas are also marginal plants that would enjoy growing in a pond. I have several Canna Cleopatras dotted around the garden, and mostly they're finishing their first flush of flowering. However, if you do make sure that you remove the seed pods from the flowers, then they will continue to flower throughout the season. The flower stalk will continue to produce more flowers. However, once it has finished, you can cut off the whole stalk. And my Canna Cleopatra's already sending up some new flowers. Unfortunately, this year's been terrible for my gladioli. Only 2 of them have actually flowered this year. The Cleome, however, is still flowering strongly. I already have 2 large flowers on this plant, and you can see that there is actually a 3rd flower starting to open. My begonia Santa Cruz is still continuing to flower strongly and has been all summer. I tried to get hold of some more of this year, but it was unavailable, so I've gone for this variety, Starshine Bronze Papaya, which is a similar flower but this gorgeous leaf. And of course the dahlias are still continuing to flower at this time of year. These need deadheading regularly. And the sunflowers have continued to consistently flower throughout this summer. However, my main reason for growing them was to provide height at a time when my garden plants were still quite small, so I probably won't be growing these again next year. My Begonia Rex Silver Spirit has been growing really well since it was left out all of last winter. However, I'm not sure if it's just a fluke, so I have planted a couple more of the Silver Spirits, as well as a Silver Lace, and I'm going to see how these get on this winter, and I'll back them up with leaf cuttings. My Miscanthus is growing lovely and tall now. I absolutely love how the evening sun captures the leaves, and the foliage has this beautiful stripe running through it. As mentioned before, my ricinus has been grown from seeds that I've collected myself, so there's been quite a lot of cross-pollination, and I'm seeing quite a lot of variety in both the size of the leaves that are being produced and the number of leaves being produced, as well as the height that they're reaching. This variety more closely represents Ricinus Katie, while this variety has much smaller leaves but is forming more of a bush. And this one doesn't have any tint of the red or pink like the blue giant I grew. And this one's growing over 6 foot tall, but it doesn't have as big a leaves as the ones I showed you first. Unfortunately, with the very wet summer that we've had, my tomatoes have suffered from tomato blight. Both the leaves and then most of the fruit has been spoilt. Tomato blight is a disease that spreads by a fungus-like organism and is common in warm, wet summers like the one we just had. If you can get to the tomatoes in time, you can still pick them. Even if they're still green, they can ripen off the plant. It won't do you any harm to eat them. However, if they do show signs of blight, it's best to discard them because they won't taste very nice. If they're affected, the tomatoes will have started to turn a bit brown and will just have the appearance of being a bit rotted. So I've tried to salvage what I could from the plants. You can see here this one is not looking good. And even amongst the tomatoes that I've salvaged, a couple of days later it was clear that some of them had been more affected than they first appeared. So these ones too have been discarded now. So for now I want to take you around the bog area of my garden. Fairly deep under my gunnera I sunk a large trough so that it could retain water. And therefore a lot of the planting in this area are plants that really enjoy wetter soils. This brown mark, however, has occurred because the gunnera is still thirsty for more water. In front of the gunnera I have a few elephanteas like this xanthosoma, and the smaller leaf behind it is Colocasia Maui Gold. I love the darker foliage of the Colocasia coal miner, however this year it's been a bit overshadowed by the gunnera and hasn't grown quite so well. The calla lilies I've got growing here are from a collection called Giraffe. And this beautiful colocasia is one called Pharaoh's Mask. Another colocasia struggling beneath the gunnera is this mojito. And this is a small colocasia wagyu which is still yet to develop its colour. The Equisetum japonicum just adds a totally different texture to the garden. And these long barred stalks spread easily through the bog area of my garden. And growing amongst it here, you'll notice these red leaves of the red barren, or Japanese bloodgrass. The umbrella grass has got a bit lost since the gunnera got bigger, but you can see a bit here in flower. This plant is a close relative of papyrus and absolutely loves the bog water area. And then behind the gunnera, I have an arum lily called Hercules, with attractive speckled foliage and the most beautiful flowers. The grassy leaves at the back are from my yellow iris. This looks at its best when it's flowering in spring. And the Farfugium japonicum is this lovely speckled leaf plant. However, it seems to have been enjoyed by the slugs recently. Behind all this we have the lovely towering foliage of the Colocasia pink china, which is doing really well this year. And poking up at the back here, you can just about see the leaves of the Washingtonia, which only just survived this winter. I was actually hoping this would have grown a bit bigger this year. Under the gunnera, I have a small tree fern. These are very slow growing, and I've had this for about 3 or 4 years already. And it's still so small, it's quite easy to miss. This beautiful red foliage is the Persicaria red dragon. While this lovely ginger is another plant that's quite easy to miss amongst all this foliage. However, when it flowers, it's simply beautiful. So this covers most of the foliage plants that you can see in this area at the moment. There is also a canna hidden amongst the colocasias, but that was a bit difficult for me to get to here. But it's a beautiful variety called Queen Charlotte with lovely yellow flowers. Next up, we're going to take a look at how to make a very simple, basic terrarium. A closed terrarium is a self-sustained ecosystem in a jar or glass container. The absolute minimum requirements for a basic terrarium are glass container, plants, soil and drainage. However, sphagnum moss and charcoal are also highly recommended. Now, the reason I decided to have a go at making a terrarium is because I had this lovely glass bottle that I wanted to do something with. I had previously tried putting air plants in it, but that didn't work. So I just ploughed ahead in my attempt to make a basic terrarium and forgot the most important step, which is to put a layer of gravel at the bottom of the container. Instead, I've added my soil, which is mixed with perlite and sphagnum moss to help with aeration. There are a range of different plants that are really suited to the environment of a terrarium. So today I've gone for this asparagus fern, this polka dot plant, which is going to add a lot of colour into the terrarium, and this parlour palm, which will love the moist, humid atmosphere. I also have some moss that was growing on one of my seed pots in a sealed bag, and a small cutting of this Tradescantia, which should root easily. But if you're looking for more inspiration for plants, there are websites such as mosswholesale.com that specifically sell terrarium suitable plants. And another website is tropicalglass.co.uk, so you can have a browse through the websites and just get some ideas of what plants you might like to have in your terrarium. But just make sure that they are suitable for a closed terrarium if you've got a lid. You can also get hold of your drainage substrate and activated charcoal if you're not sure where else to purchase these. Tropicalglass.co.uk also do starter kits if you want us to have the basics all delivered to you in one go. And you can get starter kits from Amazon as well, so it's worth having a look round and seeing if there's anything that suits you. I've started off by just placing the moss on the top of my soil. This will make a nice green carpet. However, from this experience, I would definitely have to recommend that as a beginner, you do not try and create a terrarium in a bottle. The narrow neck makes it very difficult to position your plants properly. It's really hard to clean the dirt off the glass, and I'm not going to be able to remove plants properly if they grow too big. It's also going to be a lot harder to remove any dead plant material. When planting my terrarium, I'm breaking up each plant into tiny little plantlets so they'll fit in the bottle, but I don't have any tweezers long enough to reach inside the bottle, so I'm having to use this kebab skewer, which is not ideal. But I've managed to get a small section of the asparagus fern into the bottle, and I had to use the handle of the skewer to try and get the roots under the soil. Fortunately, this did suffice, and a few days later I could see the roots had grown. Next, I've added my little Tradescantia cutting. Now, Tradescantia is an absolutely fantastic plant, both in terms of the fact that it really enjoys the humidity of a terrarium, and it's also really easy to root from cutting. There are a range of different Tradescantia plants that vary in size and colour, but they normally are purple, pink, green, lovely colour in a terrarium. But you can see here the difficulty I'm having trying to add these plants into the narrow neck of the bottle, and it's giving me very little control as to where I actually plant them. So my first attempt at a terrarium really hasn't gone well, and the second bottle that I've tried this in, I put 2 larger pieces of asparagus fern in, plus in an attempt to clean the dirt on the sides I washed it under water, which has now made the soil very soggy. But I did manage to get the first lot of asparagus fern out, and I've planted a smaller piece, trying as gently as I can to press the root under the soil level. And into this bottle I've put some of my polka dot plant and some of my parlour palm. Unfortunately, the bottle still doesn't look very clean, so I'm going to have to find a more effective way of cleaning this dirt off. But I have used some kitchen towel to absorb some of that moisture. And I'll be leaving the lid of this bottle off for a few days to allow some evaporation of this excess water. I suspect this bottle is going to get overcrowded as the plants grow bigger. But although my first attempts at making a terrarium haven't really gone as planned, I am definitely very keen to try again, get a more suitable container, and make sure that I don't repeat the mistakes that I've made here. So as this video's been more of a what not to do, I'm going to go through 5 common mistakes that people make when they're first starting to build a terrarium. And at number 1 is, of course, my first mistake, which is poor drainage. As there are no drainage holes at the bottom of your container, the water is just going to sit in that soil and make it soggy and wet. And this is likely to cause the roots to rot. To avoid this, put a layer of gravel at the bottom of your container and then a layer of sphagnum moss to keep it separated from the soil. At number 2 is incorrect watering. Both too little and too much can cause your plants to die. At the correct level, the terrarium should function as an ecosystem. The water is absorbed by the roots, released through the leaves, and the lid acts as a rain cloud, returning the moisture to the soil. Too much condensation on the glass is an indication of too much water. At number 3 is incorrect lighting. Terrariums need bright but indirect light, so avoid putting them on a south-facing windowsill where the leaves will get scorched. But you also shouldn't put them anywhere that's too dark because they will still need to photosynthesize. At number 4 is the use of unsuitable plants. The terrarium is effectively mimicking the heat and humidity of a tropical rainforest. Therefore, avoid using plants such as cacti and succulents that do not thrive in wet, humid conditions. And if you are using smaller containers, then you don't want to use plants that are going to outgrow the container very quickly. And finally, it's really important to make sure you remove any dead material, plants or leaves from your container. When removing my asparagus fern from the bottle earlier, I had to make sure I removed every single part of it because this will rot and spread mould and fungus. So after going through what not to do and showing you my terrible first examples of a terrarium, here are some much more attractive examples of what you could be creating. Thank you to everybody who allowed me to share your photos on here. I'm just going to shut up now and let you watch these. Thank you to everybody who allowed me to use your photos for that video. Your terrariums look a lot better than mine. But next up, we're going to have a look at part 2 of my RHS Wisley video. This is part 2 of my visit to RHS Wisley. If you haven't already seen part 1, this takes a look at some of the plants that were growing outdoors in Wisley. And part 2 is going to focus now on the Tropical Glasshouse. The glasshouse itself is divided into 4 different sections: the moist temperate zone, the dry temperate zone, the tropical zone, and the orchid house. In part 2, we're going to be taking a look at the tropical zone and the orchid house. The tropical zone is hot and steamy, with plants with huge leaves and extravagant flowers. Most of the plants that I show you in here like warm, humid conditions, and they might make good house plants, but they're not likely to be hardy in the UK. The Musanga cacropodes is also known as the umbrella tree. This is a fast-growing tree native to Africa with circular palmate leaves 10 centimetres across. It needs a lot of light and temperatures of around 25 to 30 degrees on average in the year. The Arenga pinnata is a palm tree from Asia. Also known as the black sugar palm, this palm can be frost tolerant down to about -1 degrees. It can grow to around 20 metres tall, and its pinnate leaves can grow up to 70 centimetres long. The Hibiscus rosa sinensis is native to China. With beautiful flowers 10 centimetres across, it should flower all year round if kept above 13 degrees and watered regularly. And there are several different coloured flowers to choose from. The Ficus laurata is also known as the fiddle leaf fig. With 30 centimetre long violin-shaped leaves, it can grow up to 15 metres tall but does not like drought conditions. And growing on this fig tree is this beautiful orchid, the Vanilla imperialis. It likes high humidity and would do really well in a bathroom with good air circulation. Although this variety does produce vanilla pods, it is the Vanilla planifolia variety which is normally used commercially. The Codiaeum variegatum pictum nervea has bold, striking foliage. It likes humidity and can take some direct sunlight, but should only be watered when the soil feels dry to the touch. The Bismarckia nobilis is a palm tree from Madagascar. Also known as the blue palm, it likes to be in full sun
and watered sparingly in winter. Its steel blue fan-shaped fronds can be up to 4 foot long. This palm can be hardy down to about -2, -3 degrees. I have a couple of these that I've grown from seed myself, but they have been very slow growing in pots because they have a very long taproot, so ideally need to be grown in long tall pots. The Colocasia aloha is part of the Hawaiian series. This is a vigorous cultivar with striking greeny black glossy leaves that grow up to 60 centimetres in length. This beautiful purple Star of Zanzibar water lily, with its richly speckled foliage, is not hardy in the UK, but it can be grown as an annual, and like most other water lilies, this variety doesn't like moving water. The Vricia imperialis is a bromeliad which grows on the Brazilian mountains at an elevation of about 600 to 1500 metres. It's one of the largest bromeliads in the world, growing to about 1.2 metres tall. Cycas circinalis is known as the Queen Sago palm and is native to India. This is a medium-sized suckering cycad that grows to about 3 to 5 metres tall. It's rare in the wild, but it can tolerate a light frost. Diune spinulosum is a giant diune from Mexico. It's one of the tallest cycads, growing up to 12 metres tall. It prefers nutrient-poor soils and is drought-resistant. The Cycas rumphii is a variety from Indonesia and New Guinea. It can grow up to 10 metres tall with leaves up to 2.5 metres long. The trunk has grey bark fissured into rectangular segments. You can see the seed cone here. The seeds will turn orangey brown when ripe. This is the Philodendron New Red with striking red underside and stems. It's a beautiful foliage plant that grows best in medium light conditions. It doesn't like cold drafts and should only be watered when the top of the soil is dry. The Tradescantia sitara gold comes from Central America with beautiful stunning green leaves with a deep purple underside. It's easy to care for but likes to be kept moist. Anthurium schlechtendalii is better known as a bird's nest anthurium. It grows well as an indoor pot plant and can tolerate temperatures down to around 0 degrees Celsius. Guzmania thala is a bromeliad with stiffly upright dark green leaves and an extraordinary torch-like orange flower. It prefers bright indirect light and does not like overwatering. The workleaf ferox is actually a shrub in the hibiscus family. It's native to Costa Rica and has these gorgeous leaves 2 foot across with deep red veins and spines which accentuate its architectural quality. It grows up to 4 foot tall and requires full sun and regular watering. This beautiful xanthosoma is a tropical aroid with large pale green elephant-eared leaves. This plant is native to the South Americas and is tender and prefers full or part shade. The Alamander cathartica is also known as the golden trumpet and originates from Brazil. It's a climbing plant that can grow up to 20 feet tall, however it can be pruned to form a shrub. It enjoys rich organic soil and temperatures above 13 degrees C. Carludovica palmata is also known as the tequila palm or the Panama hat palm, as the fibres are used to weave Panama hats. However, it's not actually a true palm because it doesn't have a woody trunk. It likes high humidity and low light. Pandanus tectorius is also known as the screw pine. It originates in Madagascar and can grow up to 20 feet tall. It grows best in full sun or part shade, and it likes moist, well-drained soils. This beautiful Begonia rex is a variety called Morning Dew. It looks a lot like the silver lace that I grow, but a bit more frosted. Begonia rex do not normally survive our winters, however my silver lace did survive last year, so I will be experimenting further with some rex varieties this year. Brainia distica is also known as the snowbush, with these beautiful variegated ovate leaves. In its native habitat in Florida and Hawaii, it's actually considered invasive as it spreads quickly through root suckers. However, it will not tolerate temperatures below 1 degree C. Coccoloba pubescens is also known as the grand leaf sea grape. Native to the Caribbean, this tree can grow up to 24 metres tall, and its orbicular leaves up to 90 centimetres in diameter. This Hibiscus Rosa sinensis cooperi is a variegated variety. It's a compact evergreen shrub with lance-shaped leaves splashed with white, green and pink, although the pink fades as the leaf matures. The Musa thomsonii is a variety of edible banana. It's quick growing and originates from the Himalayas. It could grow up to 15 feet tall, and although it could resist some frost, it is less hardy than the sycamensis. The Colocasia Black Magic has amazing dark architectural foliage. It's considered tender, however my Black Magic did survive 2 years in the ground on the south coast until it succumbed to this year's harsher winter. The Ficus pseudopalma is native to the Philippines and is often known as the palm leaf fig. These leaves can grow up to 90 centimetres long. And behind it you may notice the Cyathea cooperi. This can be grown in the UK but is not as hardy as the Dixonia. The Philodendron Ceylon is a tree philodendron. This is a beautiful plant with broad tropical leaves that can grow up to 1.5 metres long and the tree itself up to 3.6 metres tall. It normally grows in the rainforests of South America, so enjoys high humidity and dappled light. The Calliandra tweedii is also known as Tweed's fairy duster. Originating in South America and North Mexico, it's a low-maintenance tree that tolerates extreme heat and drought. It can tolerate temperatures down to -12 degrees C, but grows better in warmer climates. Next we move on to the orchid house, which is new at Wisley. It houses around 3,000 orchid varieties, as well as some companion plants like this Tradescantia albiflora nanook, which is a new hybrid variety of Tradescantia. Also known as Fantasy Venice, this is a great choice for beginners. And the Camaderia microspadix, which originates from central Mexico. This is hardy down to -8 degrees, but it's not wind tolerant. It doesn't like full sun and prefers wet summers and dry winters. Vanda orchids are absolutely beautiful, but they are not ideal for beginners as they require high humidity and temperature, a lot of airflow and some dry periods. So if you're looking to start out with orchids, it's better to go for one of the Cymbidium varieties.
I'm sure you'll agree that that tropical glasshouse is absolutely stunning. Make sure you don't miss part 3 of my RHS Wisley video next week.
In part 3 of my RHS Wisley series, we'll be taking a look at the moist temperate zone and the dry temperate zone.
Thank you to everybody who entered my competition to win canna plants. The draw is coming up next. Good luck to everybody who's entered.
It's time to draw the results of my canna competition. I've invited you to enter via my Instagram page, via Freya's Tropical Garden on Twitter, as well as Freya's Tropical Garden on Facebook. And to draw the results, I'm going to be using the wheel spinner. We have a total of 7 entries into this competition, and there are 5 prizes available in total. So Julia, Nikki, Carrie, Reese, Sarah, Josh and Neil, best of luck. And we're going to spin for the first prize, which is to win 5 of my canna plants. Congratulations to Neil. And we go again to draw the 4 winners who have won one of my canna plants. Congratulations, Julia. Apologies, the view's been a bit blocked by this advert. Congratulations to Josh. Congratulations to Nikki. And now the one final winner for this competition. Congratulations to Sarah. Carrie and Reese, sorry you haven't won this time, but do keep an eye out for my next competition. And for those of you who've won, congratulations. I'll be in contact with you via the social media method you use to enter.
Well, that's all we've got time for today. Congratulations to the winners of my competition, and make sure you're tuned in for the next episode of Freya's Tropical Garden.
If you're enjoying this content, then please do make sure you're subscribed to my channel. This is still a new channel, so every subscriber really does make a difference. You can also turn on notifications to make sure you don't miss any of my new videos. And please let me know what you think in the comments, because they really do help my channel to grow. You can also follow me on social media for links to my latest videos and my photo of the day, in which I usually share photos of flowers from my garden, along with their names if known. You can follow me on Facebook, on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, or you can join my Facebook group to ask questions or share photos. And you can find all of my YouTube videos on the Freya's Tropical Garden website, which I will also be expanding to provide advice pages as well as items for sale. Links to these pages are included in my description.